Hey, welcome back to the SNS College Football Podcast. This is the Week 7 preview. And if you haven't watched before, we're going to quickly recap Week 6 games that we talked about last week, give some winners and losers. That's always a fun segment. Quick Conspiracy Corner segment this week, talking about the NCAA fair paid to play or whatever the hell it is. And then we will recap, or we're going to break down rather 5 games actually this week. It's a pretty heavy slate with some pretty important games. And then, as always, I think possibly the most important part of the pod, we're going to get into our Week 7 bets and our leans. So, Addison, let's start with Michigan and Iowa. Obviously, a very ugly and boring game, but what were you I know you were expecting a lower scoring game with the under, but were you expecting both defenses to create as much havoc as they did?
No, I expected the defense to play well, but what surprised me really was Iowa's inability to handle Michigan's blitz and just their pressure. Also, Nate Stanley turning the ball over 3 times. I said last week that big key for Iowa is to play turnover-free game, and that totally blew up on them. They just they gave up 8 sacks, and they couldn't really run the ball either. They just couldn't get anything going offensively. They played well defensively, obviously, but they were just backing up too much offensively. So, little uncharacteristic of their offensive line, I thought.
Yeah, I think, you mentioned Michigan had 8 sacks, 13 tackles for loss, 4 pass breakups. They were getting to Stanley quite a bit. So, their best definitely defensive performance of the year. Their offense still nothing really to write home about, only 3.6 yards per carry on the ground. Shea wasn't really that good either. Are you, Dave, was this an impressive win for Michigan? Do you feel any stronger about them after this game, or do you still have them rated about where you had them before the game?
I don't think it was an impressive win. I have them rated, right where I had them before the game, but maybe trending up because I saw some really positive things from their pass rush and all of the pressure that they were able to put on Nate Stanley, which was really the difference in the game.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So, Michigan comes out with, I think, a pretty important win for them. If they lose that one, their season could definitely have spiraled out of control, but a lot of season left for both those teams. So we'll move on to the next game. The game that was on at 3:30 was Auburn at Florida. Definitely some internal debate within our group as far as which side we felt was the right side for this game. But Dave, I'll start with you on this one. Were you, what was your takeaway as far as I think this pod's been pretty down on Florida most of the year. We obviously a few of us felt pretty strongly about them in this particular game, but how do you feel about them moving forward? Are they? I don't know if I need so much as like a recap from this game. You can throw out a couple points from that game if you want, but I think my main question for you was: do you feel any better about this team competing with Georgia for this division?
So to settle the internal debate, first of all, I think that Florida ended up being the right side.
Yeah.
I thought that they could have won by more, but they turned the ball over. I still think this win was more about some things with Auburn getting exposed, like offensive line weakness. Bo Nix really had his worst game. Even when they got opportunities via turnovers, like into the red zone, they went ahead and turned the ball over again. So I thought that the win says less about Florida, more about some of Auburn's weaknesses. And I still have Florida about right where I had them before. I still think they're a little overrated.
Okay. Addison, if you want to add anything in particular from this game, but is it possible that Auburn still maybe, it's hard to say after they play each other, but it is in the swamp. It's a tough spot for Nix. is it possible that either Auburn is still possibly a slightly better football team, or could they be better than Florida by the end of the year? And then any thoughts that you had specifically on the game itself?
Well, the thing about Auburn is they still got LSU, they still got Georgia and Bama, and those last two are their last two SEC games. They're both at home, so I think they're like the defense. The defense is great. Defense is fine. If Bo Nix can come around a little bit, and in this game finally, Florida got the lead, put Auburn in a tougher spot than usual. Towards the end of the year, I still think they can be dangerous, especially if their defense, creates as many turnovers as they did in this game. So I think they're still a factor. As far as just thoughts on the game, I was very impressed with Florida's tackling. I thought that, aside from all the havoc, there was a ton of havoc in this game on both sides, but Florida in particular seemed really disciplined defensively. So I really like seeing that from them. Like, I already knew, obviously, they had a great defense, but I came away even more impressed with Florida's defense. Surprisingly, I thought that the team that created the most havoc would win this game, and I thought that actually Auburn did a better job of that, but Florida just played so well defensively that when Auburn's defense set their offense up in good positions, Florida was able to stop them. So that was the biggest key in the game.
Yeah, I'm just reading now. I don't know if you guys saw this, that Jatravius Whitlow, Auburn's main tailback, he injured his knee in that game. I didn't know that. He actually just underwent surgery.
Oh, I didn't know that either.
He's going to be out.
That's a big deal for them.
He's going to be out 4 to 6 weeks, so he might miss all 3 of those bigger games that they play. But they have a bye week. They can get some guys healthy, fix some stuff. Then they're at Arkansas, but then they've got at LSU the week after that. So I honestly would expect them to put in a lot for LSU in the bye week, get healthy. But that's a big deal because they haven't been able to run the ball. He flashed in the second half when they actually gave him some room, but they really are going to need Nix to step up the second half of the year.
But it's really important because watching them all year, he's not great in terms of yards per carry, but he wears out the opposing defensive line. So I think that's a really big deal losing him, just for losing some bruising power and some game control.
Right.
I definitely agree with that. They seem like they're a better second half running team to me. Yeah,
for sure. All right, so Florida we're going to talk about them a little bit later in the pod because they are right back on that horse having to play at LSU. Arguably a much tougher spot for them. But let's go to the last game real quick. We had Michigan State at Ohio State in the night slot. Addison, I'll start with you. I think we were all pretty surprised that first quarter and how well, Michigan State scripted or at least, game planned coming into that game. But obviously we saw some adjustments from Ohio State and their talent seemed to take over now.
Yeah, first quarter, Michigan State, offensively disastrous start. First 2 plays of the game for them, offensively they fumbled. But the good news for them was that their defense held us to only 3 points out of that. So 3-0 after the first quarter, and then the second quarter was really the story of the game. Ohio State blew up for 300 yards and with 24 points in the second quarter. So Ohio State goes into halftime with a 27-10 lead, and then that was pretty much the game from there. The rest of the game, for the most part, was a stalemate, but the big second quarter is where Ohio State really took command of the game.
Yeah, I was a little surprised at how much success OSU had on the ground. I thought that Sparty potentially had the best rush defense in the country, and not that they still don't have an elite defense, but OSU, just when you got that dynamic of a quarterback and the playmakers around him, I think it's really tough to contain a team like that. But Dave, did you, even after that first quarter, were you feeling nervous at that point, or did you feel like Ohio State was going to make the adjustments? And were you surprised at, I guess, how well Ryan Day was able to quickly adjust in that game.
Well, I was a little nervous just because we hadn't seen Ohio State have to make adjustments up to this point under Ryan Day. I thought Sparty had a fantastic game plan. I thought they did what they should have done and just like being aggressive with the pass rush early on. But so I was nervous, but I also was confident that Ryan Day could make the adjustments, and he did.
Yeah, I think Michigan State obviously early on, I think they believed they definitely had a shot, and then that second quarter, like Addison said, OSU they hit some explosives. I think they kind of broke their back going into halftime. But we will talk about Sparty, just like Florida, a little bit here. They have another tough spot at Wisconsin. Whoa, copyright. The fuck. Okay, anyway, so let's move on to the Week 6 winners and losers. So, Dave, I'll start with you. Why don't you go ahead and give your winners, and we'll go in the circle here.
Sure. So, winner from the coaching position is going to be Luke Fickell and Marcus Freeman, defensive coordinator for Cincinnati. I thought it was an outstanding game plan against UCF. Kind of on the defensive side of the ball, the bend but not break against a pretty efficient UCF offense, and outstanding play calls to get stops in the red zone, which allowed the Black Cats to get a win on a blackout night on Friday night. And then my team winner of the week is going to be SMU. They came back from down 21 in the fourth quarter to win against Tulsa in overtime, 6-0 for the first time since probably the Pony Express teams in the 80s.
Yeah, I had I'll start with my players. I had a couple of them. Davis Mills for Stanford. He's been kind of thrown into a tough spot with KJ Costello being in and out of the lineup. They've been pretty banged up on the O-line, but they had, I think, what was considered maybe a tougher spot for them against Washington, and he showed up and was very efficient. You could tell there's more confidence with him. I could tell that the offense, the guys around him, seemed very confident in him being confident himself. So I gave him a little bit of a nod as, we were kind of killing Stanford earlier in the year, and they showed up and got a pretty big win there. But my next guy was my guy, Jet Duffy, down in Texas Tech. He had, I believe, 440 total yards of offense, 420 through the air, 5 total touchdowns. Led Texas Tech to an outright win as a double-digit dog against Oklahoma State. Mike Gundy, that's what you get for sitting your ass on the cooler when your team is on the field on defense. So I think I've always been a little annoyed that he doesn't have anything to do with the defense, but that just seems like it's always a game that Oklahoma State somehow blows. But I give credit to Jet Duffy coming in there, another backup quarterback, getting thrown into the mix, and he really produced and got Texas Tech a pretty big win. Tolman, I had the same for my coaching spot, same as you, Fickell and Freeman. I did think that the game plan was brilliant. They knew that UCF was all about the explosives, but they weren't overly efficient. I was really surprised that UCF did not use Darryl Mack Jr. in red zone, or when they got into the red zone. They had used him earlier in the year kind of like to help with having a running quarterback. The true freshman, 2 picks when they got into the red zone. So, yeah, I think Fickell and Freeman, they set their guys up for success. And then my team winner is going to be Oregon State. I would have to double check. I think that's their first Pac-12 win in a while, though. They blew out UCLA. They've been close in a couple Pac-12 games this year already. But, yeah, shout out to the Beavs for finally getting a Pac-12 win there. So, Addison, your winners, and then just transition right into the losers after that.
Okay, I didn't really note of any winners. But
you never do. You're just such a hater, dude.
Cal's defense, for selfish reasons, that being that I had Cal plus 15.5.
Everybody was doubting.
Yeah, everyone was doubting, and then it went all the way up to about 21.5, and then I rebooked it there, and then they ended up covering the smaller line anyway. So Cal always seems to come through for me whenever I bet them, and their defense just, even when their offense sucks, which is quite a bit of the time. Their defense just finds ways to keep them in the game. So, Cal defense. My losers. So both teams in the Miami-Virginia Tech game. Miami, they started the game, I think, 5 turnovers in the first half. Jaron Williams got benched. N'Kosi Perry came in. I wanted to look up Jaron Williams' numbers again because they were so bad.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. 4-7, 3 interceptions. So Virginia Tech is up 28-0 at halftime. And we know how they've been struggling lately. Looked like, they were going to just cruise, have an easy win, get things turned around for them. And then in the second half, they blow that lead. Miami comes all the way back. I think they tied it up, didn't they? Or were they down 1 point? Yeah, they tied it up 35-35.
Yeah.
Virginia Tech ended up pulling it out. But that is just embarrassing to just be given, that big of a lead and then almost blow it. So, Fuente, his team, they're on the list again because, that was pathetic. If Miami hadn't turned it over 5 times, then they could have easily got blown out. Moving on, blindside block rule makes it back on the list.
Yeah, man, for real.
Ohio State game, Ohio State had a pick 6 that was called back because of a blindside block. It was a horrible call. Aaron Browning barely even hit the Michigan State guy, and they threw a flag on it. And then they bring on their referee guy who always tries to explain the calls, and he basically just shills for the refs and tries to say that it was a good call. It was total bullshit, though. Like, Chris and Kirk weren't even convinced by this guy's argument. Like, it was just terrible. Some rule, as we've said many times already this year. And, it's just a good thing that this kind of play didn't happen in a game that was close. Because if that called back, like, an important touchdown in a game, like, I would have fucking, like, broken something. Because that's just ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It was obviously total horse shit. Fuller should have been awarded that touchdown. And I just, these kids got helmets and pads on. It's not two-hand touch. They got to be able to play a little bit. So, I guess we're moving on.
The rule, it's just nonsense. Like, you have to wait for a guy you have to announce that you're about to block someone.
Yeah.
Like, why the fuck?
Yeah. All right, yeah. I'll give my losers, and then I'll let Dave, once I'll give it to you, you can go into conspiracy corner real quick. But I don't have a loser player. I just have 2 units. We've already kind of touched base on them. Auburn and Iowa's offensive lines. They need to play better, especially Iowa's offensive line. They were shockingly bad. I guess kind of on the fly, I think Michigan and Iowa's offenses overall are losers. I think they made it combined in each other's territory 13 times, and they combined for like 10 points in those 13 trips. So that's pretty horrific. But yeah, Auburn O-line, Iowa O-line, they need to do better moving forward. Addison, I had Miami also. Just everything about Miami just sucks. So they're a loser right now, just for good. Just like Tennessee, you're on there again, Tennessee.
Yeah. Tennessee. Just assume that Tennessee's on there.
Yeah.
I don't even have to explain it.
Yeah, and then I had 2 coaches this week, one of which actually won as outright as a road dog. Pat Narduzzi, just simply letting Duke back into that game to where you needed Kenny Pickett to bail you out with 40 seconds left to actually take the lead back and win the game. It's absolutely pathetic. Cutcliffe, coach circles around him. After like a few havoc plays that Duke got, you can call it lucky, but if you ever back Pitt at any point, just you cannot claim a win until the clock hit zeros, because Pat Narduzzi is a loser. He was a winner at one point on this pod, I think like a week or 2 ago, but now he is like a 10-time loser. So last coach I have, Chip Kelly. I don't really know what to say about him in that program right now. They are in rough shape. Getting blown out by Oregon State is pretty bad. I really don't see any improvement from this team. I thought they would at least be a little bit better, but I don't know at what point these players just kind of stop buying into what Chip's selling, because Chip can be a pretty stubborn asshole from what I understand. But UCLA, this is as bad as it's been for them. I really don't know how many games they're going to win this year, but it's certainly not going to be too many more. Tolan, go ahead with your losers and then Conspiracy Corner.
Yeah, so my loser of the week, my best bet of the week was Washington, winning by 2 touchdowns against Stanford, and Washington got physically dominated by Stanford. Stanford's offense up until this point in the year has been pretty dreadful. Washington's defense gave up almost 500 yards of total offense, and the time of possession was 40 minutes Stanford, 20 for Washington. Jacob Eason had a pretty poor game, and Washington is officially out of the conversation for the college football playoff. So we're now go into Conspiracy Corner, and we want to continue the conversation on the hot topic around the NCAA Fair Pay to Play Act. Earlier in the season of the pod, we talked about how California has now passed a bill that will allow college athletes to benefit monetarily from their talents. That bill has been signed into law and will take effect in California in 2020. As a reaction, it appears that a new bill is being shopped around in Florida. Potentially, states are realizing that this is going to happen, and in order to compete for the best players, you might need to have legislature that allows players to benefit from their likeness. And finally, also on this same topic of news, former Buckeye great Anthony Gonzalez is working on proposing a federal bill that will allow college players to benefit for their likeness. So I think that this is in reaction to California passing that bill, and I see it as people reacting because you need to have an even playing field to get the best players. Okay,
yeah. Our guy Gonzo trying to get it done in the court system. That's pretty cool. So, all right, yeah. We will move on now to our Week 7 games, and like I said in the beginning, we got 5 of them. Some interesting games. I think some we think that are more interesting than others. But let's start with the Red River Shootout. I'm calling it that because that's what it is. I don't care if it's supposed to be Red River Rivalry or whatever bullshit is politically correct now. This is the Red River Shootout. So, Addison, I'll start with you. I believe the line is actually in most books OU -11 right now. I know that I believe you and Dave actually have Texas in this game. Why don't you go ahead as far as, let's start with when Oklahoma has the football. We know how explosive they can be. We know that Texas has been a little bit banged up in the secondary. Even when they've been healthy, the secondary has been kind of spotty. But what do you think are the keys to the game as far as Texas? We know they're not going to stop Oklahoma, but how do they slow them down in this game?
Well, so my thoughts on this game, Oklahoma's offense has been, on a historic pace in terms of yards per play. I don't know where they're at after this past week's game, but they were averaging 10 yards or over 10 yards a play. So their last 2 offenses, I think, were the best in college football history. They're both at like 8-something. So they've just been ridiculous this year. Somehow they seem to keep getting better and better, even when they lose their Heisman Trophy winning quarterback. And they're also extremely balanced offensively. So it's really hard to have in any certain part of their offense dual threat quarterback. They have a lot of ways to beat you. With this game, I think both of the offenses are going to be really tough to stop. I think there's not going to be a lot of punting. It's probably going to come down to just which defense can create more havoc, because I don't see them getting a lot of just regular stops. So it's got to be turnovers, sacks, negative plays, that kind of thing. Texas has been better at creating turnovers than Oklahoma this year. Actually, Oklahoma has not really taken the ball away much at all. So Texas has an edge there. But yeah, that's what it comes down to really for me. The last 6 regular season games in this matchup, the underdog has covered all of them. And Texas, as an underdog, has gotten a few straight-up wins in that time frame. The Big 12 championship game last year, actually, though, Oklahoma has the favorite covered. So, but 6 out of 7, though, the underdog has covered.
Yeah, this I've been going back and forth in this game. I know that Keontae Ingram is a little banged up, and I'm kind of monitoring that situation because Oklahoma this year actually has improved a little bit on defense under Alex Grinch. They're not great by any stretch of the imagination, but they have been getting to the quarterback, and they have actually been preventing some explosives through the air. They haven't been overly efficient against the pass, but they have prevented some explosives. Where you can get Oklahoma...
One thing I want to I do think they have the better defense, which is a change from recent years, but they're also good at getting off the field on third down. Just getting to third down sometimes is the problem for them.
Yeah, and I was going to say where you can really get them is with explosive running plays. They've been absolutely gashed with chunk plays on the ground. So I think Keontae Ingram's status is really big for this game. Dave, I might give a couple other thoughts after, but I'll go to you now. And I think Addison sort of transitioned into it, but let's go to when Texas has the ball. What?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll let you just run with it. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the key to the game for me is, you asked the question earlier of how do you slow down Oklahoma's offense. I think Texas adopts a different game plan. I think they go ball control, running the ball with Sam Ehlinger, who I think you don't want to rely on your quarterback to run, but he's proven that he can carry the ball 20, 25 times a game and wear some defenses out. So I look for Texas to adopt a different game plan, see if they can get some time of possession and use that to keep them in the game. That's why I took them at plus 10.5.
Yeah, I would say that it's been interesting kind of trying to follow the money on this. I think there's been definitely some Texas money at 11 for sure. Maybe some at 10.5. The thing that's kind of interesting is that bookmakers have, put it at 10.5 or 11 and haven't really moved it. And there's been a lot of tickets on Texas, but it seems like more money on Oklahoma. So I think they're monitoring kind of the injury situation, and I could see some Texas money coming in later in the week here, in a rush, because I think it just feels like a spot that Texas, I would imagine them bringing the same kind of focus and intensity as they did against LSU. And obviously we saw they had a chance in that game. And, this game I think means even a little bit more to them. So I know you guys both picked Texas. So obviously I'm not going to, ask you your thoughts on the number. What I will say is that if Ingram's out, and this thing gets to 10 or less, I actually would lean Oklahoma. If it gets to 9.5, I might actually bet Oklahoma. But if it stays above 10, I don't really see value with Oklahoma there. I think you'd have to lean Texas then. And like you said, Addison, the dog has covered quite a bit in this. I think Texas could win the game. So it's kind of interesting. I guess I'm indifferent on it, but we'll go ahead and move on.
This is one of those games where you give a bump to the underdog.
Yeah.
Just regardless.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So we feel like that should be a pretty interesting game. Let's move on to the second of the 5. It's going to be Alabama at Texas A&M. It's going to be really the first kind of test that Alabama's had. They are actually 16.5-point favorites right now. Dave, I'll start with you here. I know we're kind of going to briefly touch base on this one, but what do you think? How does A&M stay in this game? And I don't even mean just within the number. How do they, pull off the shocker and actually win this game? Can they, first of all, what are going to be the keys as far as when they have the ball? Are they going to try to do what Texas does as far as maybe ball control it, keep Tua and company off the field?
I think you could do that, but actually, I think Texas A&M can get off the field on defense. So I would actually in this game, I would try to open up the playbook, see if you can get some big plays, and then rely on your defense a little bit. If you can limit Alabama's explosive plays, I think they can get off the field on third down, and maybe I would go with an aggressive game plan, try to get some big plays on offense. Haven't shown a whole lot of that potential this year, but I think this is a chance to do it.
Yeah, I was a little surprised. Alabama this year, and remember, they haven't really played anybody, but their defensive line metrics are not very good. They're 68th in adjusted line yards. They're 59th on standard downs. Teams are grading out about 42% of the time, so they rank a little bit higher as far as just opportunity rate. They're 34th, but those are very un-Bama-like numbers. They're very pedestrian. Stuff rate, they're 98th in the country. Havoc rate, I believe that they are, 77th. So I really think that if Mond, good Kellen Mond shows up in this game, this actually could be a little bit of a surprise for the casual fan Saturday. I think that I'm leaning A&M if it gets back to 17 or 17 and a half, and I actually think there's some sharp coin on them. I'm a little concerned about them as far as can they exploit the fact that Bama's defensive line hasn't been good, because A&M's offensive line has been actually worse if we're comparing them. They rank in the triple digits in some of the more important metrics. So I feel like if they can step up a little bit, if Mon can create some plays with his legs, I actually give them a puncher's chance in this game. I know it sounds crazy. I know they've got a few losses on the year, but they played Clemson pretty tough. They could be argued they should have beat Auburn. So I think that I would definitely lean them on that number. Dave, your quick thoughts before I let Addison maybe throw in a couple of thoughts there, but your thought on that number at 16.5, or let's just call it 17. I think it's what a lot of books will end up having it at. How do you feel about that?
It seems about right to me. The reason I don't take the reason I'm going to stay away from this game is because the number seems about right. I can see Alabama hitting on some explosive plays, controlling the game, having a consistent between 17 and 24 point lead, and I can see that as a backdoor situation. So that's why I'd stay away.
Okay, yeah, no, it's totally understandable. Addison, do you have any additional thoughts, or do you just want to move on to the next game?
As far as A&M, I haven't been super impressed with them this year. I know they got 2 losses to really good teams, so they're getting a lot of credit for their quote-unquote great losses. But the week after they played Auburn, I was not impressed by them when they played Arkansas. They did not look great in that game, I thought. So still trying to figure them out, I think. I was surprised how much this line has moved down, though. I think it was at 20-something to start. Now it's down 17 and possibly even below that.
Yep.
So, yeah, it definitely does seem like there is money going in on A&M.
Yeah.
So I think I would lean Bama. That's just my thought, but I don't have a lot of strong thoughts here.
Okay,
As far as the spread goes.
Well, how about we move on to a game that we might have some stronger thoughts on then. Let's go to we're going to go out to Kinnick at night. We got Penn State at Iowa. Iowa just coming off of, obviously, that ugly loss up in Ann Arbor. This line currently, I believe, in most books is 3.5. It's gone back and forth. You had some 2.5 all the way up to 5 yesterday. I think there's some Iowa money that came in at 5, 4.5, 4. There's a lot of Penn State money early, so I really think there's two-way action here. Addison, I'll start with you because I know that you have Penn State in this game. Why don't you go ahead and give your reasons why? And, let's start with when Penn State is on offense. What do you expect them to be able to do against Iowa's defense?
Well, I definitely do expect it to be a low-scoring game, so I I think Iowa's going to be able to keep them from, getting explosive plays, putting up too many points to like where it gets like out of hand. But I got it when it was 3.5. Mostly just from what I saw Iowa offensively last week. That was the big reason why. Like, I think Iowa can, contain Penn State offensively. I think the other side of the ball is going to be where there are big problems for Iowa. Some interesting things about Iowa at home. Like, it seems like every year, like their biggest home game of the year, they actually play well. A few years ago, they beat undefeated Michigan late in the season. They beat Ohio State that game next year, and then they also same year they almost beat a highly ranked Penn State team. So they have been able to give teams scares at home, but I do think I like the way Penn State's playing right now, and I just think that if you're Penn State's defense, you really like what you saw from Iowa offensively last week. So that was the biggest thing for me as far as like a matchup in this game that made me go one way.
Yeah, here's the thing that I'm stuck on is that Penn State is third in the country in havoc rate. From what I saw last week, I really don't have a lot of confidence in Iowa's 21st havoc allowed rate, which they were first in the country last week going into that Michigan game. But if we look a little bit closer at their schedule, they allowed Iowa State to create some havoc. They also allowed Michigan. So really, they might have been padding some stats and not allowing like the really weak teams to get to them. I can't see any way possible that I would ever back Iowa in this game. I might have a little better's regret if this line doesn't get back to 3 at all. I would like to grab Penn State, I think, at 2.5. I just was, I don't know, a little reluctant because there has been, some magic at Kinnick at night the last, however many times they've played there. And, I would expect Iowa to kind of be able to get off the mat after a really bad showing like that. But there's just no way that I could back them. I don't think there's value in Penn State over 3. So at 3.5, it's just a pass, I guess. But if it's 3 or less, I'm definitely would take Penn State. Dave, let's go to you real quick as far as when Iowa has the ball. I mean,
you guys already covered it.
I
think the question that we'll see answered this week was Iowa's first ranking in the first ranking in the havoc rate allowed, like, legit, or is this a problem that's going to continue on throughout the season? I see it regressing to the mean a little bit. Maybe it's not going to be as bad as it was against Michigan. Magical things can happen at night in Kinnick. So I see this as a low-scoring game, but Penn State, slowly controls the game for the whole game.
Yeah, interesting to note that, if Iowa can get, prevent Penn State from like a quicker start, keep the crowd in the game. Penn State is 87th in havoc allowed. So Iowa has the opportunity to create some negatives, maybe get some short fields, and that's where you could see them pull off the upset. But I think we're all probably leaning Penn State at this point, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
Score prediction: 24-10 Penn State.
Yeah, I would say. I don't think I'd be too far off from that. I can't trust Iowa offensively right now to really put up more than maybe 14 or 17 points.
Yeah, but offensively they need to get rid of the ball quicker if they're gonna try to pass it. Get the backs involved a little more in the passing game. I think they got away from the run a little too much against Michigan.
Yeah.
They were throwing on first down several times. It didn't ever seem to work. And just when you're just getting harassed like that, maybe dropping back all the time isn't such a good thing. So
Yeah.
they seem to play right into Michigan's hands. So, if from an Iowa perspective, this week you got to figure out how to pick up blitzes. Like, they could not do that last week.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely think they need to throw it to the backs a little bit more. They need to get the ball out quicker. Like we said, Penn State, elite as far as the havoc they create. So you got to get the ball out quick. We'll move on to the next game, though. Second to last game we have on the docket. We've got Sparty at Wisconsin. That line is currently at 10.5 right now. Wisconsin obviously favored. Dave, I'll start with you this time, and I guess we'll start when Wisconsin has the ball. Obviously, we know what they want to do offensively. Sparty, as far as, besides last week, even though I think OSU is a much different team to game plan for, I think it's a little trickier with them. Wisconsin's obviously going to be a little bit more straightforward with what they want to do. Is Sparty going to find some success this week as far as their finding their rush defense again and forcing Jack Cohen into having to make plays through the air?
Yeah, I think that they're gonna. I think they're gonna find a little more success defensively, because what they had to be concerned with last week was not only the Ohio State running game with J.K. Dobbins, but also the run threat of Justin Fields. Jack Cohn is a little bit more one-dimensional, so I think Sparty is more suited for lining up against like a power I formation or a more power running formation and being able to stop that. So I have confidence that Sparty's going to bounce back and be able to make some stops on defense in the running game.
Yeah, I think stylistically it's just a good spot for them, and I would expect D'Antonio's teams to kind of get off the mat a little bit more frequently than like maybe other teams in the country after like a loss like that. So this is actually one of my more confident plays of the week. I really do think Sparty's going to make this game a little scary for Wisconsin, but Addison, I guess the question then becomes, if Sparty's going to win this game, they're just going to need more from the offense. When they have the ball on offense, what can they do to sustain drives and to get points against Wisconsin?
Well, there were some positives last week, I'd say. I thought Lewerke played well. I thought the O-line played pretty well, given what they were up against. They were the first team this year that actually did a decent job of blocking Chase Young. He still had a pretty good game, but they figured out that you got to actually help the left tackle sometimes.
Yeah.
So they did a good job of that. They're good at like trying to neutralize pass rushers. Wisconsin. They've been really good defensively this year. They're fourth in the S&P plus defensively. So I guess Lewerke can play like he did last week. If they get the running game actually going a little bit, we've really dogged on their running game the last few years, but I think it's actually improving as the season goes on. They've got some freshman running backs, so I think those guys are starting to play a little better. So they just need to continue doing that. So yeah, that's basically there were positives last week. That's pretty much the takeaway there.
Okay. So at 10.5, where do you lean, Addison?
I would definitely lean Michigan State.
Okay.
We kind of talked about, for Michigan State defensively, more one-dimensional attack, so they're going to be able to key on the run game more. So that should definitely help them. They should, last week defensively, their defense did have its moments. Second quarter was pretty bad for them, but besides that, they played pretty well. So if they can string, a full 60 minutes together, they'll definitely be in this game. Wisconsin, they ran all over Michigan, and that looks like it's a pretty good defense. But I think, Michigan State, even though after last week they fell all the way down to like 16th in yards per carry allowed, I think that one game's kind of an outlier, though. So I think this is still, one of the best rush defenses in the country. So one key there, though, is what's the status of Ponishuk? He got hurt at the end of the OSU game.
Yeah, I think he might be out, actually.
Yeah, I think D'Antonio's probably not going to let on too much about that.
Right.
So we might not know until game time. If he's out, that could definitely be a big loss for them. But they've got a lot of good players on that D line. So they're a pretty stout unit regardless. But it'd definitely be a big boost if he was back.
Yeah, I've got. I think Wisconsin's gonna eke it out like 20-17. Dave, you're lean against the number at 10.5.
Well, I got 23-13, so I guess Michigan State, but it's close for me on the number.
Okay. All right, yeah, let's move on to the last game before we get into our Week 7 bets. We're going to be down in Death Valley. Florida's going down to LSU. LSU currently is either 13 or 13.5 point favorite. We'll call it 13.5. I think that's what it is in most books. Dave, kind of your other team, I'll let you start. When we saw what Florida can do havoc-wise on defense last week against Auburn, are they going to be able to find similar success against LSU in that kind of new quick-fire pass game?
So strength on strength here, right? We've got Florida as one of the top havoc-creating defenses in the country, and LSU as one of the most efficient offenses in the country, and been very, very explosive in the passing game, and also efficient with the short passes with the new passing quarter, Joe Brady. It's been an excellent fit between Joe Brady and Joe Burrow. So I think that Florida is going to create pressure, but Joe Burrow is completing 70% of his passes against pressure. So I'm going to give the edge to, I think Joe Burrow handles the pressure well. He's got the advantage of Death Valley at night, which is going to be an electric atmosphere. And I think he will handle the pressure, and that was the deciding factor for me taking Florida or taking LSU laying the 13 points.
Yeah, I have LSU as well. I just think that everything Florida wants to do defensively is reliant on pressure. Todd Grantham, defensive coordinator, brings a shit ton of it. The problem is that could really backfire against LSU. As you alluded to, Dave, their short passing game has been incredibly efficient. They can throw the ball downfield if they need to, but they really might not need to in this game because the playmakers they have can basically take a slant 80 yards to the house. I think it's just a really bad spot for Florida. They're coming off a really, emotional high against Auburn. I think they're probably going to be a little bit beat up after playing in a game like that. Trask is playing on a sprained MCL with an offensive line that's not that good in front of him. They've been all right. I think the problem for them is that I'm actually expecting LSU to get off to a pretty fast start, and Florida's not really a team that can play catch up. I actually think LSU's going to blow these guys out. I think they're going to win this game by 3 touchdowns plus. So I felt very comfortable laying the 13. I just think it's a bad spot for Florida. Addison, your thoughts as far as, let's talk about maybe when Florida has the ball on offense. I mean, is it really as simple as trying to just move the sticks and keep Joe Burrow and company off the field?
Well, I will say I'm worried about the health of Trask.
Yeah.
I was shocked they actually put him back in the game last week. He seemed like a sitting duck back there against a defense that brings a lot of pressure.
Right.
It actually worked out not too bad for them. I actually thought Emory Jones played well when he was in there.
I did too.
So,
yeah.
So that was interesting, but I think there are opportunities for Florida offensively, even though they're not highly regarded. But LSU hasn't played up to their potential, I'd say, defensively this year.
Yeah.
Still a lot of great players, but they've given up a lot of points too. So I think Florida will have their opportunities. I just think LSU is going to have too much firepower offensively. Although, like I said earlier, if Florida can make tackles in space, not give up big plays, and if LSU just makes no effort to run the ball, which it seems like they've done a lot this year, and just let Florida tee off on them, that could play into Florida's hands. So from LSU, I'd like to see them try to keep Florida a little more off balance defensively, just so they can't, bring pressure all the time.
Yeah.
But I do think Florida's just going to have a tough time keeping up with the LSU offense.
At 13.5, where do you lean?
I think I would lean Florida.
Okay.
It's not. I'm not really confident in that though.
Okay. Okay, yeah. So, obviously we've got a pretty interesting slate next week. Let's go ahead now and move on to the last segment of the pod. Probably, I would say, always the most important. We get into our Week 7 bet. So, Dave, I'll start with you. If you want to give, I know you have a best bet, and then maybe a few others that you feel really good about.
Yeah, so I like, as my best bet of the week, Temple +5 against Memphis. I think it's a potential look-ahead spot for Memphis. They got to play Tulane next week, which I think is going to be probably one of the most important games to decide that division. Like what Temple has done defensively this year, and they seem to play pretty well at home. So I'm very confident in Temple +5 in Philly. Another bet that I really like this week, we have a very, very exciting Wednesday night matchup tomorrow night to kick off the week. Appalachian State versus, back in the old home state, Louisiana Lafayette, the Raging Cajuns, over 69.5. I think these are two very, very solid offenses. They both had, some rest, about 10 days off in between games. So I see a lot of points in that matchup. And then finally, I took the under. I got it at a good value. Michigan and Illinois under 54.5. Some questions about who's going to be playing quarterback for Illinois. I don't think they're going to be able to score. So under 54.5, Michigan, Illinois.
Yeah, I like all those. I do like the Temple. I like that spot for Temple a lot. As you alluded to, I think they usually are pretty damn good at home in Philly. They're even better as a dog at home. The thing that I like about this game is that Memphis is very inefficient on offense, and how they're getting their points is with explosives. Temple is one of the better teams in the country in preventing explosives. I think Temple's going to find possibly some success being able to run the ball on offense as well. Memphis has actually been pretty decent on defense this year, but I think there's value in the number. I really feel like it should be more around like 3 or less, and I think Temple, I got it at 6. You have it at 5, but yeah, right now it's at 6, maybe even 6.5 in some books, but I think Temple has a real shot to win this game, so I think that's good. I agree with the Wednesday night over. I've actually seen some money on the under, but it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Louisiana Lafayette has a really explosive ground attack, and App State will never stop it. I also think App State's going to find a lot of success against Louisiana Lafayette's defense, who is their front seven is one of the worst in the country. So I really feel like there's going to be some explosive offense. I feel like it's a short week. Are these guys coming off a bye? Actually, Dave, I don't remember now that I think about it.
Well, they didn't play on Saturday. They played the previous Saturday. So, I don't know. Does this Wednesday game count for this week or last week's game? I don't know.
Yeah, regardless, both defenses are not very good. I just think it's going to be a lot of fireworks on Wednesday night. So I'll get into, I guess, a couple of my actual bets. I have Navy listed as my best bet this week. I believe this line has been bouncing back and forth between Navy -1 back to Pick'em, Navy back to +1. But I think Navy has a pretty large advantage as far as being able to create some havoc. Tulsa allows a lot of it. Tulsa's defensive line their offensive line is pretty horrid. Navy's defensive line is actually pretty strong. They showed up in a big way against Air Force last week, which Air Force was supposed to have the better line on both sides of the ball, and Navy looked like they actually had the better line on both sides. I think they're actually decently undervalued in the market right now. So I'd like them to go down to Tulsa and win that game. I feel very confident about them. I would say one other that I can give. I feel good about NC State. I think that's a Thursday or Friday night game. Uh, they are -3 versus Cuse. I think the line's a little off. I think it's actually good up to maybe like 5, maybe even 6. But um, it's similar stuff. Like I think there's some havoc advantages for NC State. Syracuse, I just feel like they are a little overvalued because people are thinking about them as like the Syracuse of last year, the year before. They are not good. Um, but I think NC State's got a couple mismatches in this game. I like them quite a bit as a. I think it's like 4.5 right now, but I got them at -3, so I like them a lot. Got a couple other leans. I'm looking at Arkansas, looking at Arizona, both as dogs. But Addison, I'll go to you, and you can give out some of your better ones there.
Okay. I mentioned Texas and Penn State already, so won't talk about those really.
Right.
But I've also got Florida State plus 26.5. I was looking back, and I think this is the biggest, at least since like the 80s, the biggest underdog Florida State's ever been. And I feel like Clemson keeps getting rated like this is last year's Clemson team. I know everyone's back, but they're just not playing that great yet. Will they come around? We'll see. But we just haven't seen it yet. They've kind of got that, post-national championship hangover, which can sometimes last an entire season. We've seen that many times in the past. So I think Florida State will be able to hang around for a half. They'll probably start to fall apart in the second half like they usually do. But, definitely keep it within the number, I think. I could see them end up losing by something like 17 points, but they'll do enough to cover. I've got 2 Big Ten unders, Michigan State, Wisconsin, Penn State, Iowa. Both of these have started to drop quite a bit. They've both dropped 2 points already, so the best numbers are gone already. Just obviously a lot of in the Big Ten right now. There are 6 teams in the S&P top 10 defensively. And of those 6, 4 of them are outside the top 50 offensively. So, Big Ten, I'm going to be looking at a lot of unders in this conference season. And then the last one I've got, Colorado, Oregon, under 56.5. This one's actually gone up a point. I just like the way Oregon's playing defensively. They're rated the number 1 team in the country in the S&P plus defensively. So that's one of the big surprises of the season, I'd say, just how well Oregon's played defensively. These are definitely 2 polar opposite teams. Colorado, pretty good offensively, not very good defensively. So I think Oregon's defense is going to win out and be able to shut down Colorado.
Yeah, it's funny.
That's what I've got so far. I've also considered Nebraska right now.
Okay.
7.5 at Minnesota.
Is Martinez healthy? Is he playing?
That's a good question. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, you should check into that. He's got a knee injury.
That's a good point.
What's funny about that Oregon game? I actually have Oregon -20.5 as a lean. I randomly started looking at that game, and I thought kind of similar to you. I was like, man, I really actually think Oregon's going to have success defensively. And Cristobal's been asked like all year, what the hell's been missing from this team, and he said just simply offense. Like they've missed a lot of bodies. They finally got him back last week, but Cal I think is a really bad matchup for them. I really could see Oregon blowing these guys out. I just don't know if I can lay that many points with Oregon right now with them not playing particularly well. But yeah, I think the under is probably a pretty good play there, to be honest. I guess we'll give a couple for Corey real quick since he's got some on here. He seems to like
a lot of the same picks as me, it looks like.
Yeah, he likes Texas. He likes Sparty. He's got Sparty, Wisconsin under, Penn State under, Penn State. Looks like he's got Iowa State -10 at West Virginia. I haven't been able to dig too much into that yet, but Iowa State clearly I think he made a really good bet last week with them versus Texas Christian TCU. I think they were kind of undervalued by the market just because they had 2 losses and there were 2 games that they could have won and one of which they should have won against Iowa. So, I don't know. I could see them going into Morgantown and just laying waste there, but I haven't really dug much into it. Looks like he's considering Florida State as well, but yeah, looks like Steele doesn't have any bets. He doesn't seem to put any on until Friday or Saturday, anyways. Now, but I think that's really about it, though. Dave said he got cut off, Addison. So, do you have any final thoughts before we wrap it up?
Yeah. So, halfway through the season now.
Yeah.
So I know it seems like the season is going by really fast. It seems like this happens every year.
Right.
But the leaves are just now falling. Weather's finally getting cooler. The biggest games are yet to be played, and there's a lot of football left. So let's just enjoy the rest of the season. A lot of these teams, like Ohio State, they've got a lot of big games left on their schedules. The SEC teams have a lot of big games. So I think there's going to be a lot of good football in the last half of the season.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like you said, a lot of football left. I'm curious to really see what a lot of these teams are made of, especially with, for example, like Texas, Oklahoma. I mean, Oklahoma just hasn't been challenged yet. I want to see what Hurts can do, even against like a porous defense. I just want to see him against a team with a pulse. So it'll be interesting. But yeah, if you guys have any questions or comments, go ahead and put them in the comment section. In the description box below will be our up-to-date records for the year with our Week 7 bets. Make sure you scroll down to check those out. And otherwise, we will see you next week for the Week 8 pod.